If you have been here for a bit, you know I'm a big fan of microneedling. I have made a lot of videos on medical microneedling, but actually not too many on cosmetic needling, which is what I've gotten quite a few questions on lately. So in today's video, I thought I'll bring you along while I'm doing a cosmetic needling session. I just got out of the shower. I'm still a bit flushed from taking a hot shower, and I have been in my lab. Ever since I have adopted this little girl, every time I film, she sits in my lap. She is the definition of a lap dog, which I love, but she's also a little furnace. So between being and the hot shower, I'm quite warm and, like I said, still a bit flushed. But my skin is completely clean. My face, neck and chest, which is what I will be cosmetic needling, are completely clean. I have nothing on my skin. So I am ready to do a cosmetic needling session. But before I forget, in my last video, I was giving away a box filled with some beautiful skincare. And so many of you left the most incredible, thoughtful, heartwarming comments. Thank you so much. I wish I could give each and every single one of you one of these boxes. But unfortunately, I had to pick one winner, which I will announce at the end of this video. So if you entered last week's giveaway, please stay tuned till the end. But again, thank you so much for all your lovely comments, all your love and support, and for being here. I wouldn't be here without you, so thank you. So again, in today's video, I'm bringing you along for a cosmetic needling session. Now, the main difference between medical microneedling and cosmetic needling, just in a nutshell, because I have made so many videos on this subject, which I will all link down below. But the main difference between medical microneedling and cosmetic needling is the depth of needle penetration. In medical microneedling, we use a needle length of 0.5 millimeters or longer. At 0.5 millimeters or longer, we pierce the stratum corneum, the dead outer layer of our skin. We enter through the epidermis into the dermis. In cosmetic needling, we use a needle length of 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters. At 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters, again, we pierce the stratum corneum, but we barely enter into the epidermis. So because we are entering different layers of the skin, the outcome is going to be different. Medical microneedling is also known as collagen induction therapy because, again, in medical microneedling, we enter through the epidermis into the dermis. In the dermis, we find collagen and elastin fibers as well as fibroblasts. So by entering into the dermis with our tiny little needles, we are causing a controlled injury. The body responds to this controlled injury with a cascade of reactions, all of which eventually lead to more collagen and elastin production. In cosmetic needling, again, we are barely entering into the epidermis. There are no collagen or elastin fibers nor fibroblasts found in the epidermis. So therefore, cosmetic needling, in my opinion, is mostly for product penetration. I say in my opinion because there are some experts who argue that cosmetic needling eventually also leads to more collagen and elastin production. To me personally, that doesn't make much sense because, again, there are no collagen, no elastin fibers, no fibroblasts found in the epidermis. But that brings me to my usual disclaimer. I am not a microneedling expert. I am just sharing with you what works for me and what I have done for the past 16 years or so. But if you're interested in doing your own microneedling sessions at home, please, as always, do your own research. But again, the main difference between medical microneedling and cosmetic needling is the depth of needle penetration. Because we are penetrating different layers of the skin, the outcome is going to be different, and the way we go about our session is going to be different. When I medical microneedle, I want to make sure everything is nice and sterile. As I just mentioned, I do have bean in my lab. Was I to medical microneedle right now, as much as I love to have this little stinker in my lab, was I to medical microneedle right now, I would not have her in my lab. Because again, I want to make sure everything is nice and sterile. Now, when I cosmetic needle, I still want to make sure everything is nice and clean. My hands are nice and clean. My skin is clean. My equipment is clean. But when I cosmetic needle, I don't have to worry quite so much about things being sterile as when I medical microneedle. Also in medical microneedling, I have to really be careful about what I apply before, during, and after my medical microneedling session. Versus in cosmetic needling, I can apply just about anything within reason. I would like to penetrate just a bit deeper into the skin. So very often when I cosmetic needle, I will cosmetic needle using a vitamin C serum or an L-ascorbic acid serum. And you have probably heard me say that when I medical microneedle, I would never use vitamin C because there have been some studies, they were rather small, but nonetheless, that showed that when vitamin C was medical microneedled into the skin, so when it went into the dermis, it led to granulomas. But again, in cosmetic needling, we barely enter into the epidermis. Therefore, cosmetic needling can be done using a vitamin C serum or another antioxidant serum. I also very often will use a peptide serum or a growth factor serum. Again, in cosmetic needling, we can use just about anything within reason. We would like to penetrate just a bit deeper into the skin. Personally, I wouldn't use exfoliating acids such as glycolic acid or lactic acid. But again, very often I will use a vitamin C serum or a different antioxidant serum if I happen to have it. But for the most part, because I usually do my cosmetic needling sessions in the evening, and you will see in a second why, but I usually do my cosmetic needling sessions in the evenings. And I usually cosmetic needle once a week, usually on a Friday evening, just so I remember. So because I do my cosmetic needling sessions in the evening and I apply my vitamin C in the mornings, usually I will use either a growth factor serum or a peptide serum. But let's get started before this video gets forever long and I will keep talking while I do my session. Now I have cosmetic needled using a Dr. pen, a stamp, and a Derma roller. All three work beautifully. But because I use a stamping technique now when I use a Dr. pen, I stopped using a Dr. pen for my cosmetic needling sessions because it just got to be a bit tedious. When I use a stamping technique, it definitely takes longer than sliding or doing little circles. I sit there and really meticulously stamp my skin, and it takes about half an hour or so. Now, when I medical microneedle, I don't mind using a stamping technique. I medical microneedle every 4 to 6 weeks, so I don't mind taking the time. But like I said, I cosmetic needle once a week, usually in the evenings when I'm already tired. So I don't want to sit there with my Dr. pen and just stamp for half an hour to 45 minutes. So I abandoned using a Dr. pen for my cosmetic needling sessions. And for a while, I used a Dr. stamp, which worked beautifully as well. But I found it to be just a bit clunky. So long story short, I went back to what I started with 16 years ago, a Derma roller. This is a 0.25 millimeter Derma roller. And what I like about this particular roller is that the head is replaceable. So after about 10 or 15 uses, I usually replace the whole roller because the needles will go blunt. But with this roller, I don't have to throw out the whole thing. I just have to replace the head, which I like. So again, this is a 0.25 millimeter Derma roller. I got this off of Jane Amber. I will link it down below. This is nice and clean. I sterilized this after my last use. And I also have a tiny 0.25 millimeter roller right here. Now this is absolutely not necessary. I was just curious about this little guy, but it is nice to use around the eyes. Again, it's not necessary. I can use this as well, but since I have this, I might as well use it. So what I personally like to do is I like to apply my serum, which I again want to penetrate just a bit deeper before I start rolling or needling. I could needle first and then apply the serum. That's just what I do. I like to apply it first. So I'm actually going to use the Copper Peptide Serum from Allies of Skin, which is what I have been using lately to do my cosmetic needling sessions. And I'm going to be quite generous with it. So I'm going to apply 2 pumps to my face. And then I will apply more to my neck and chest when I get there. Now I also have this Colorsome growth factor serum right here. Now if you have been here for a bit, you have heard me rave about the Colorsome Advanced Hair Care System. It is incredible. I don't ever want to be without it. But the Colorsome face serum I used to not be very fond of. I honestly cannot stand the smell. It really stinks. However, when I went to Germany in May, I brought my roller so I could continue my cosmetic needling sessions. And because this is so tiny, I brought one of these. And every week I use this for my cosmetic needling sessions. And I was amazed how healthy my skin looked. So I have since gotten more fond of this, but I still can't stand the smell. But this is something else I could be using for my cosmetic needling session or any other growth factor serum. In the past, I used Neogenesis Recovery, which I would actually like to try again. It's been so long, and I remember just loving it, but I'm always trying different skincare. But anyways, I've used that in the past. I could use any other growth factor serum or peptide serum. If you have a favorite peptide or growth factor serum, let us know in the comments. But let's get started. So I have my roller right here. Again, this is nice and clean. I sterilized this after my last use. What I personally like to do, I usually put my finger right here and I apply slight pressure. So I don't press very hard. I would say the pressure I apply is kind of like putting a pen to paper. So I take my finger here, I apply slight pressure, I start at my jawline, I go to my ear and I lift. I go back to my jawline, applying slight pressure, I cover that same area again, I go to my ear and I lift. So I do not go back and forth, and I find that really important. In fact, a couple of years ago in a microneedling video, I sacrificed a piece of my arm to show you what happens when one goes back and forth with a roller. Basically, rather than to create tiny little micro punctures, which is what we want, going back and forth creates scratches or grooves. We don't want that. So I find it very important to always lift. Go back to where I started, go to the end or to my ear and lift. And I do that about 4 or 5 times. Then I take my roller, so you can already see where I rolled. I have some redness right here, some erythema. I have quite reactive skin. I turn red very easily, which is good when doing this because I can see where I have gone already. So I will take my roller and set it right above where I was just at, and I do the same thing. Again, I apply slight pressure. I go to my ear, I lift. I go back to where I started from, I cover that same path, and I do that about 4 or 5 times. Always lifting, never going back and forth. You can see where I was. I go above, I do the same thing. Applying slight pressure, going all the way to my ear, lifting, going back, and doing about 4 or 5 passes. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I like to cosmetic needle in the evenings because first of all, you can see how nice and red I turn, and I stay this red for quite a while, for a couple of hours. So I don't want to do this in the morning and then go out looking like a lobster. But I could really cosmetic needle any time of the day. It doesn't really matter, but that is one of the reasons I like to do my cosmetic needling session in the evening. And also, I don't really want to worry about applying sunscreen afterwards. I just do my, right now, peptides or my growth factors. And then personally, this is a question I get quite frequently. Personally, I go on with my regular evening skincare afterwards. Now, once I get to the orbital bone right here, I don't go past it. I just go to the orbital bone, and then I will get a little closer under my eye with my tiny roller. And I'll show you when I get there how I do that. All right, so I have this cheek already covered horizontally, and you can see I'm nice and red. Now I do the same thing vertically. So I, like I said, always go on with my regular skincare, my regular evening skincare afterwards, or was I to do this in the morning, I would go on with my regular morning skincare. But in the evenings, one of the most important steps in my evening skincare routine, so again, I'm just going to the orbital bone, I lift, I go back, and I just did this pass right here. So now I'm setting my roller next to it, to the orbital bone, lift, applying slight pressure. In the evenings, probably my most important evening step is my tretinoin, my retin-A. So I personally, again, this was a question I got quite frequently, I personally do apply my tretinoin after my cosmetic needling session. My skin is completely retinized. I have been using tretinoin for at least 6 years, and I use it nightly. So my skin is completely retinized, and I have 0 problems using retin-A after a cosmetic needling session. However, again, if you're hearing some background noise, Bean decided to give herself a bath. However, again, please always do your own research. If you have at all reactive skin, if your skin is not retinized, it's probably not the best idea to then use it after a cosmetic needling session, because again, it will penetrate a bit deeper into the epidermis. So I'm just doing exactly the same thing as I did horizontally. Always taking the roller off. Now, of course, this is taking longer now because I am talking to you. When I do this by myself, it takes 5 minutes. It's really, really fast, especially with the roller, which is one reason I, like I said, got back to the roller. It was just too tedious to do a weekly session stamping with my Dr. pen. But I still use the Dr. pen, of course, for my medical microneedling sessions. So you can see I'm getting some lovely erythema. I'm nice and red. And that's it. Now, I get asked often, why don't I go diagonally as well? Why do I only go horizontally and vertically? I feel that I don't have to go diagonally. You can see I've created some nice erythema, and I don't feel like I have to do more damage. This doesn't really cause damage, but you know what I mean. I don't feel like I have to do more. I feel like I got a lot out of what I just did, and I don't need to go diagonally. So now I will do the exact same thing on this side. Again, I start at my jawline, and this is just how I like to do it. I always, for some reason, section my face like this, but it's not written in stone. But what I find the most important is to lift the roller and to not go back and forth. Now, another question I get frequently is, do I use red light therapy after microneedling? And yes, I absolutely do. After both. After medical as well as cosmetic needling. Now, when we medical microneedle, again, we create a controlled injury on purpose, right? We create some inflammation on purpose. And we do, of course, want that inflammation because that is part of the cascade of reactions that eventually lead to more collagen and elastin production. But I do feel when I use red light therapy after my medical microneedling session, it helps bring the inflammation down just a tiny bit. Not so much so that I get nothing out of my session, but just enough so I heal a bit faster. And then after cosmetic needling, it helps me to get some of this redness down so I don't look like a lobster for too long. So yes, I definitely use red light therapy after both cosmetic as well as medical microneedling. But I want to make sure, of course, now I have both. I have a panel, a red light therapy panel, and I also have a mask. I want to make sure if I use my mask, of course, that it is nice and clean, especially if I use it after medical microneedling, but also, of course, if I use it after cosmetic needling. All right, so I've covered all of this horizontally. Now again, I do the same thing vertically, starting at my jawline. I can start over here, it doesn't really make a difference. And I do about 4 or 5 passes. I might be doing a few more or less right now as I'm talking to you because I'm not always counting, but usually I do about 4 or 5 passes. Again, I don't go past my orbital bone. I always lift. And this, by the way, doesn't hurt at all. You can see I'm just getting erythema, I'm just getting redness. I'm not getting any pinpoint bleeding or anything. This is not painful at all. But that being said, everybody's pain threshold is different. So to some of you, this might be uncomfortable. I do get asked quite often if I use numbing cream. I don't use numbing cream when I cosmetic needle because, again, this is not painful to me at all. But I also don't use numbing cream when I medical microneedle, even though that is a bit more uncomfortable. But I do have a fairly high pain threshold, so I don't find medical microneedling painful either. But again, everybody has a different pain threshold. So would I have a higher pain threshold, I probably would use numbing cream, but then I would make sure to rinse it off really, really well before needling, because the last thing I want is to microneedle, whether it is cosmetic or medical microneedle, the numbing cream into my skin. All right, so I've already done this side horizontally as well. Now when I get to my chin, what I like to do is I like to section it in half because I'm going to make a weird face just to have it a bit tighter, and it's just easier to section it in half. So again, I start right here. I do about 5 passes, applying slight pressure. Then I go above, and I only go to where I was just at. So I might be overlapping a tiny bit, but I don't overlap too much because I've already done all of this. And then I go this side as well. Now sometimes I will go a bit onto my lips when cosmetic needling. I won't do that when medical microneedling because personally I think that that's too deep for the lips. But with a 0.25, I will sometimes go into my lips just to give them a bit of love as well. And then we're going to go vertically. Again, even though I'm doing shorter strokes now and it would be very tempting to just go back and forth, I lift every single time. It really doesn't take more time than going back and forth. It's just being conscious of it. But I really think when using a roller, that is the most important, is not going back and forth. Because again, what I want is to create tiny little punctures, not scratches or grooves. I do above the lip, I do the same thing. I go one side and then the other. And again, these strokes are even shorter, but I do not go back and forth. I lift, I set it back, I lift. And then same thing as I'm going vertically. Always lifting. Again, I'm not too worried if I get onto my lips a little bit. In fact, sometimes with this needle length, again, I do it on purpose. Same thing on the other side. I have a mirror right here. I just want to make sure I covered everything. And yes, I did. So now I'm going to do my forehead. And with the forehead, I like to, again, just section it into half. And I always go over my eyebrows as well, because like probably everybody else in the 90s, I overplucked my eyebrows. And while they have come back a bit, I'd still like them to come back even more. And microneedling can definitely help with hair growth. So again, I do this once a week, usually on a Friday evening, just so I remember. And ideally, I will do this for 3 Fridays in a row. The 4th Friday, I will then medical microneedle and not cosmetic needle. And then the 5th Friday, I will cosmetic needle again. Now, sometimes I will medical microneedle after 5 or 6 weeks, just depending on what is going on in my life. But let's say I medical microneedle 6 weeks after the last time I did. Then I will cosmetic needle the 5 Fridays before that. So I don't take time off. I do this on a Friday evening, either for 3, 4, or 5 weeks. Then the 4th, 5th, or 6th Friday, I will medical microneedle. And then the following Friday, I will cosmetic needle again. I hope that makes sense. But the week I medical microneedle, I don't also cosmetic needle. That would be a little much. So it's always in weekly intervals with the cosmetic needling. Again, I hope that makes sense. All right, so you can see I'm nice and wet like a lobster. So again, this is one reason I like to do my sessions, my cosmetic needling sessions in the evenings, because I will look like this for a couple of hours. So now I will do the exact same thing on my neck and my chest. Again, I will apply some of this. And I don't think I have you sit through the whole session because I don't want you getting bored. I'll just show you half of my neck and then I think we will finish this video. But I do the exact same thing on my neck. I start at my jawline. And again, I apply slight pressure. I lift, I come back. I do about 5 passes. And then I set it right above and I do the same thing. Sorry, I think I just shook the table. Now, some people say to not microneedle over the thyroid. The thyroid is right here. Personally, I always microneedle over my thyroid. First of all, when I cosmetic needle, this is 0.25 millimeters. I'm not worried about being near my thyroid. But even when I medical microneedle, I personally microneedle over my thyroid. I have a scar right here because I have a double neck fusion and I would like to diffuse that scar a bit, which is why I'm microneedle right there. But again, please do your own research. And I would say if you have any thyroid problems, it might be a good idea to avoid the thyroid area. But personally, I do my whole neck, including my thyroid area. So after this now, once I'm done with everything, once I'm done with my neck and my chest, I will apply my tretinoin. Like I said, personally, I do apply tretinoin after my cosmetic needling sessions. My skin is retinized. It doesn't bother me at all. And then after that, I will apply a night cream and that's it. So I just do my regular skincare routine. I actually just simplified my evening skincare routine. And if you would like me to make a video on it, I would be happy to. Just let me know down below. But if you saw my last evening skincare routine, so I'm done horizontally, I'm now going vertically. If you saw my last evening skincare routine, you saw that I applied an estrogen cream after my tretinoin. I actually used an estrogen cream on my face for a couple of years now. Since adopting Bean, I have paused the estrogen cream. I'm a little bit bummed about it because, to be honest, I can't tell you if I can see a difference from it or not. But the studies on it look quite promising, which is why I was using it. But since adopting Bean, I have paused using the estrogen cream because this little girl is such a cuddler and she's also a licker. So at night, she often sleeps in my arms. And, I have my arms close to my face, so she is close to my face. And I don't want her getting in contact with the estrogen or licking it. So I have paused the estrogen for now. I might at some point resume it again, but right now I am not using it because I don't want Bean to get in contact with the estrogen. But anyways, I have half of my neck done now, and I realized I forgot to do under my eyes. So let's do that really fast, and then we are done with this video. So for my eyes, what I will do, because again, I don't want to go past the orbital bone, but I would like to get a bit closer to my lash line. So I just take my 2 fingers and very gently pull down just slightly. And then I take this tiny little roller. So that is why this one is nice, because this one is a bit big between my fingers. I take this tiny little roller and I still don't, and I'm going to look in the mirror just to not poke my eye out, but I still don't go past my orbital bone. But because I'm gently pulling down the skin, I can now get closer to my lash line. And this is such a small area. I'm just going to go horizontally, and then when I get to my crow's feet out here, I can also go vertically. So you can see I got closer to my lash line without actually going past the orbital bone. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side, gently pulling down, just doing a few passes. Again, I'm just going horizontally because this is just such a small area. And I'm lifting the roller in between every single time. And then I can go horizontally here on the crow's feet and vertically as well. So I will finish the rest of my neck and my chest off camera, but I hope this video was helpful and I hope it answered all of your questions. Any more questions or comments, of course, please leave them down below. Always love to hear from you. Oh, and the winner of the skincare packet, again, I wish I could give every single one of you one of these packages because you guys are so amazing. Reading your comments, and there were many of them. I think at this point we are up to over 600 comments. But reading your comments, it really warmed my heart. You are just incredible. I'm so lucky to have such an amazing community here on YouTube. But unfortunately, I could only pick one winner. So the winner, and I will also put it right here, is WEM-CF9. And WEM-CF9, please get in contact with me. I will put my email address in the description box. Please get in contact with me so I can send you the box of skincare. If I don't hear from you within, let's say, 10 days, then I will pick an alternate winner. So please get in contact with me and I will send the package your way. Thank you so much for being here. Again, any more questions or comments, please leave them down below. And I would love to know, do you cosmetic needle? And if so, what do you use for cosmetic needling? Let us know down below. And also, what do you use? A roller, a doctor pen, a stamp? Let us know below. And thank you so much for being here. Until next time, say bye, Vinny. Until next time, bye.